What would you do if the dream you had since childhood was to sail around the world? Today's guest, Alison Gieschen, the nautical novelist, didn't just imagine that dream. She started living it at age 54. Welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors, where we share real stories of people getting stuck up Shit Creek, the paddles they used to get out, and hope for anyone stuck up their own Shit Creek right now. At 54 years old, Alison sold everything she owned, and together with her husband, stepped onto a 43-foot sailboat and sailed into the unknown. But this isn't a story about escape. It's actually a story about storms, real ones in the ocean and invisible ones in the mind. Fear, trauma, reinvention, and what it actually takes to rebuild your life when there's no map, no guarantees, and no turning back. And just a quick note before we dive in, please excuse any audio dips during this conversation. Alison was literally on the other side of the world talking to us from her sailboat. This is the Nautical Novelist, and this is her story. Alison, thank you so much for being here. It is such a pleasure. I can't wait for you to share your story. But if you would kind of introduce yourself to us and let us know who you were kind of before your Shit Creek that you're going to talk about today.
Okay. So I was fortunate enough to grow up on a 100-acre farm in upstate New York as a child.
Cool.
Yes, it was very cool. And we had every animal. We were self-sustaining. We had raised all our own food, both vegetables and animals. And, but I was the last of six. So I was alone a lot because my next older brother was 4 years older than me. And my older sisters were gone before I even, remember living with them. So
Gotcha.
there was three boys ahead of me. And they wanted nothing to do with me. So I spent a lot of time outdoors and riding my horses and doing things. And sailing and horses have been a very consistent theme through my life. And the sailing part is an enigma because when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I can remember this like it happened yesterday, it's so imprinted and vivid in my mind. I was walking through the grass barefoot, and I remember the feel of the grass and the color of it. And I was between our riding ring and our garden. And all of a sudden, I stopped dead in my tracks because I had this vision, which had never happened to me as a child. And it was so clear as if I was actually there. And I was standing on a boat, and I was being propelled across the water with the sails. And it was the most amazing feeling that I had ever experienced. I'm like, oh, this is so cool to be on a boat, floating on the surface of the water, being propelled by the wind. And I just was in awe. And I thought, how cool would it be someday sail around the entire world, like to go all the way around this big world on a sailboat?
Yeah.
So after this epiphany left me, I went running into the house and I said, Mom, I want to learn how to sail. And she's like, okay, honey, that's nice. We had a pond on our property and there was no water anywhere around us up in the Catskill Mountains. So it's just, she's like, wow, that's crazy, I guess. And the second strange thing that happened is I was walking through that same area. Now, a bunch of things happened in that one spot. So I don't know if there was some like magnetic field or some channel that went up into the heavens from that spot, but I had like 3 or 4 things happen there that were absolutely ethereal. So the second one that relates to this story is that a voice said to me, as clear as you talking to me, someday you are going to find someone who loves you unconditionally. Those were the exact words. And as a 9-year-old, I'm going, okay, what does that mean? And I'm thinking about it, loves you unconditionally. And I'm thinking about my mom and my dad and my family. And I'm like, well, I guess that must mean it's somebody different, but I'm okay with that. That's cool, whatever. So that was my childhood. And somewhere around the 9th grade, my dad got transferred down to Charlotte with IBM. So my parents relocated, and it was really traumatic for me because they sent me to a friend's house, and those people showed up with airline tickets, and I was moving to North Carolina, and they sold everything, the farm, the animals, got rid of everything, and they were afraid it would traumatize me, so they didn't let me be there. They just did it. And so I spent the next couple years down in North Carolina, like suicidal, just miserable. On top of that, I was bullied because I was a northerner coming down with this influx of people to the south, and they didn't like us. So the first words that anybody spoke to me at my new school were, "Go home, you damn Yankee." And they bullied me, and it was definitely traumatic. But I survived those years because I got later in high school and starting college at UNCC, I began sailing competitively. I started crewing for friends of ours who had this beautiful race boat on Lake Norman, and I absolutely fell in love with sailing. And I didn't really even remember the dream at that point. It was just a natural progression of things that happened in my life. So meanwhile, my mother, who grew up in Boston Harbor and loved the water, she and my dad retired and they moved to the coast of North Carolina, New Bern, North Carolina. And my mom became a competitive sailor. She decided she was going to be the fastest woman skipper in the Pamlico Sound. The problem was
Wow.
there were no other women skippers, so she just had to become the fastest sailor, period. So she started doing all these major, these race series and stuff, and she was taking names, kicking butt, bringing home trophies. And I would try to go there as often as possible because it was a 4-hour drive from Charlotte to New Bern to race with her on weekends. And then one weekend was this big regatta coming up, and I had to go be there for it. So meanwhile, my cousin worked at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, and next to him was an eligible bachelor who was a former merchant marine engineer, and 3-time national dinghy champion. And he's like, "Hey, cuz, you want to come down and be a ringer on my Aunt Jerry's sailboat?" And my cousin's there, you might want to meet her. So Dan's like, "Yeah, why not?" So the two of them get in their van and they come down, and we met at the sailboat race. And that dinner, at the regatta afterwards, we won the regatta. This amazing experience happened. Like, I got up to use the bathroom and he went to the bathroom, and I was going to be all smart and come out real quick and stand there with my arms against the wall waiting for him. So he comes out and I go, "Where you been?" He goes, "All your life or just now?" And that was it. Like, I was just smitten. So we scuba dived, windsurfed, sailed, just did all these amazing shenanigans that weekend. It was a 3-day weekend. And so we're sitting in a bar. He's getting ready to go 11 hours back to Philadelphia. I'm going to 4 hours to Charlotte. And he goes, "My dream is to sail around the world someday." I said, "Mine too. Let's get married." So we did.
That's amazing.
And his dad was a Lutheran minister, and he married us less than a year later on the country club lawn where we met.
Wow. Great story.
So
I like the idea that you were going to be cool, calm, collected. Yeah. And then he hit you with that line. That's great stuff.
So we got married, and I had to move up to where he lived because I just graduated and he had the job, but I came with horses. So he built me a beautiful horse farm, and we had our 3 kids right away. I had 3 under 4, and I became a school teacher so that I could spend my summers with my children and run my equestrian riding program, and life progressed. And I was a school teacher for years and years, and then came the second big trauma in my life. I left a tenured teaching position to go work for a $25 million horse park 6 miles from my house. It was my dream job. And I had a master's in administration and leadership, and I took the director position of this horse park, not knowing that it was a very evil entity and there were very awful people doing very awful things. And they had no intention of ever letting me run the place. They just needed somebody to fulfill that position. And it was horrifying from day one. And I left, the security of my job and my career to go do this. And within a year, it was so bad, the bullying and the harassment and what they were doing and saying, that 4 of us women that worked there, other women that I had hired, started a lawsuit, and we won. We won the lawsuit, but it meant I could work there. So I lost my job, and I was devastated because now I had nothing. I couldn't go back and get a teaching job because they wouldn't hire me because I made too much money when I left. They weren't going to start at my salary when they could get somebody out of school for, $20,000 a year. Yeah. So I went into this depression, and I just was so lost. And one day my husband just looked at me and he goes, "It's time." I'm like, "Time for what?" He goes, "We're going to make a 5-year plan, and we're going to do this. We're going to sell everything, and we're going to sail around the world." So that's exactly what we did. We spent 5 years looking for the perfect boat. We went to boat shows all across the country and listened to seminars. And we met this man named John Kretschmer, who was giving us a seminar on sailing in storms, because that was my biggest worry at the time. And he just boosted my confidence and just told these amazing stories about, how he survived them and what he did and how he never had fear. He just, made the right decisions. And at the end, he goes, and I do have a heavy weather training passage where I take you out 1,000 miles in trade winds and put you on a boat and let you experience heavy weather sailing. And I said to Dan, like, this is a must. I have to do this.
Yeah.
He had crossed oceans on merchant ships, but I had never been off a large lake. And I had a lot of fear
Right.
about the storms and that kind of thing. So we did go on this 1,000-mile heavy weather training passage. It was phenomenal. And John Kretschmer, talked to us and grilled us and helped us figure out exactly what type of boat would be best for us. And
Awesome.
so we found our boat. Within 5 years, we sold our home, opened the doors to our barns in our home, and sold every single thing in there except for what would fit in a couple bags to go in our car. Drove that car down to our boat. Finally sold the car, and then we're like, okay, it's time. So we cast those dock lines off and never looked back.
Is that tough getting rid of the last thing, like your car? You know what I mean? Like it's like it's your last thing, so you're like, oh, once this goes, we're leaving. Yeah,
that was the hardest part, watching the car go. And then right after that, my husband realized that we needed something at Home Depot, which was 7 miles away. So we had to get on our little collapsible bikes and ride 14 miles round trip for this one stupid little part. And I'm like, damn it.
That's funny, but you got to do what you got to do.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about why. Well, we know why you guys wanted to do it in that moment. It's so hard to make a big change, let alone a small change. And one of the reasons I love your story is because it's a rather large change. Like you're putting everything on the line. And a lot of people like me even finding the courage to go to a new store tough, So what is it in you, or what was it that was pushing you to be like, this is it, we're doing it, the commitment to actually follow through?
Well, the fact that it was something that we both dreamed about. I mean, I had a dream that came from a much higher place than I even knew at the time. And to me, it was the ultimate freedom people do not realize how much they're tied down by the world around them and how it affects them. I mean, your jobs, your bosses, your mortgages, your all your stuff. And the harder you work, the more stuff you get. The more stuff you get, the more you're tied down and the less you're living life. And the largest change for me as a person was always doing everything and everybody else's bidding. Everything I did was for other people. Everything. And you're doing it just to survive. And when you get rid of all of that, you get rid of all the noise, you get rid of all the possessions, you get rid of everything, and you just go out and you live life and you live your dream, you change. You become a fundamentally different person.
Yeah. So let's talk about the first trip then. What was that like for you? The departing from shore.
So our first ocean crossing, we went because of me and my fears. I asked my husband, can we go with a rally? And a rally is a group of boats that go together. So you go a week in advance. They give you education. They check your boat. They make sure you have the right safety equipment, and you go through all the protocols and everything. So we felt very prepared, and with a whole group of other sailors to make this, 1,500-mile passage from the New England to the Virgin Islands. And we started off and we had to head down the coast of the U.S. because we had to get to a spot where the Gulf Stream gets narrower, because the Gulf Stream's a little tricky to cross. So we went down to cross it. And as we were on our way, we heard an engine noise. And we had never heard it before. It was a cavitation in our prop. And Dan's like, I don't know if we want to cross an ocean, because the Hurricane Irma had just gone through the Caribbean and it had devastated the islands, and they were in shambles. And we were actually the first group of boats going there after Irma, and we were bringing like relief supplies with us. And there's boat wrecks all over these islands, and there was no way we were going to go get anything repaired. So he's like, we need to make a decision. Are we going to go, or are we going to go get this checked out? I'm like, no, let's go get it checked out. So we went to shore around Beaufort, and we had a diver come and look at the prop, and he didn't find anything. Then we had a guy come and look, engineer look at the internals, and he couldn't find anything. So we had to actually pull the boat out of the water, and different people inspected it. Nobody could find the reason for this cavitation. So we're like, well, whatever it be, it can't be that bad. So this is 10 days later that we're tied to the dock, and we're still working with the weather router from the ARC rally. And he goes, okay, if you leave right now at like 9 in the morning, he goes, you have 24 hours to get across the Gulf Stream before more storms come up the East Coast. And if you don't go now, you're going to be here another 10 days waiting because there are no weather windows anytime soon. So we're like, oh my God, let's do it. So we took off the dock lines, we took off across the Gulf Stream, and it was a beautiful crossing. I mean, the wind was good, the waves weren't too bad, and it was overnight the next day at about maybe 5 in the morning, and it was my turn to go up because we take shifts overnight. And I'm up there, and the sun is starting to come up, and I see this giant wave coming towards me, and I'm like, holy crap. And the boat gets there, and it goes up and over the wave and back down again. I'm like, well, that didn't feel so bad. And I see the next one coming, and then I realized this is just the size of the waves. I couldn't see them in the dark, but this was the size of the waves, and they were much bigger than they were supposed to be. So I tried to hold out, but I'm panicking. So I'm pounding my foot on the floor because my husband's bed is right underneath, and I'm like, Dan, you gotta come up here. I can't handle this. So he comes up, and he's like, well, wind just picked up. We got a reef. We got to, get ready for this because this is not going to be good. And I don't know if you've seen the movie A Perfect Storm.
Yeah.
Where the two fronts converge. Well, that's exactly what happened. We had one in front of us, one behind us. The winds were picking up, and the waves were getting closer and closer and larger and larger. So before long, we had 18 to 20-foot waves crashing on the deck of our boat and washing down both sides. And I couldn't even be up on top. I had to go in my bedroom, and there's portholes on each side of the bedroom, and I could see white water on both sides, which means we were submarining. I mean, those waves were coming over us and just washing over our entire boat, and it was terrifying. Yeah. And then Dan starts pounding, you gotta come up here, you gotta come up here. And I had heard a noise, and we had our dinghy strapped to teak life rails. The life rails were bolted to the front of the deck. Well, the waves ripped the life rails right out of the deck and cast the dinghy overboard, but the dinghy was still tied to the mast. And the dinghy was really heavy and loaded with equipment. So now it's pounding against the boat and it's threatening to rip our mast off. So I had to take the wheel. Dan had to clip in with his safety lines and go up on the deck and cut this thing free. So he's up there and the waves are still crashing, and I'm like, oh, this is bad. This is bad. And he cuts the dinghy free. And when I saw how quickly it disappeared, I mean, it went in the blink of an eye, like just it was there and then it was gone and the waves swallowed it. And I thought, if he goes overboard, I'm just jumping in with him because I am not going to be on this boat alone. I will not be here alone. So he makes a few other things that were broken up there, trying to straighten the shit out. And finally he gets, back to the cockpit and then all hell broke loose, really, because there were screw holes where the bolts were ripped out. The water was now coming through those and running through the ceiling panels, and it was raining on the inside of our boat. I had potted herbs, and they fell onto the floor, and so now the dirt is mixing with the water. The books and manuals came out of the bookshelves. They were on the floor, so there's loose paper mixed with it. And then all my cutlery drawers opened, and they came and spilled onto the floor. So I have knives, books, mud, water. And my husband, and I'm there cursing, and my husband looks down and he goes, oh, God, it looks like we're back on the farm with all that mud. Okay. So we start making some calls on our sat phone at the time. And my cousin, who was keeping an eye on us, said, you guys need to get off the ocean now. He goes, you need to turn around and you need to head back to the U.S. as fast as possible. He said, but we could be at the Caribbean, not Bahamas in 2 days. Can we just get there? He goes, no, it's coming from there. You got to get to the shore. So we were like, okay. And so we turn our boat, we change our sails over, start heading back. And the moment we did, the sun comes out and a pot of dolphins comes and they start jumping and playing around the bow of our boat. And it just was like, you heard the voices going, oh, that angelic sound. And we're like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And so he turned and got to get back across the Gulf Stream. And we arrived the day before Thanksgiving. So we had $14,000 worth of damage to our boat. Our lifelines were broken. Our dinghy was gone. We lost a windsurfer. We lost a solar panel, a titanium whisker pole, just a ton of stuff. But insurance was going to cover all of it. And so we're licking our wounds and, figuring out repairs. And I met this woman in the laundry because I had to wash so much stuff that was just devastated by the
Yeah.
water in our boat. And I'm telling her the story. I'm like, you know what? I said, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Do you have anybody to spend it with? And she's like, no, it's just the two of us. I'm like, well, would you come to our boat and let me cook you dinner? And she's like, sure. So those people came to our boat and we heard their story and it made us seem like wimps. I mean, it just put our
No.
entire lives into perspective. I mean, we're talking cancer, broken backs, just these amazing, horrible failures to them personally. That wasn't just cosmetic. It wasn't just a little scare or, a little trauma, but it was real life stuff, life-changing things. And they're still there and they were still out there and they were still trying. And I'm like, darn it, we're lucky. We're the lucky
Hmm.
ones. And it just
Yeah.
changed my whole perspective meeting those people. And that's really been a strong theme in our journey is that we are exactly where we are when we are meant to be there.
I love it. As soon as I started believing that, life gets easier. Like, I'm doing it now. This sounds silly, but I'll be sitting in traffic in Atlanta. And now I can like actually open the door to like, maybe I'm not supposed to be there on time. Like, and then you start considering, okay, God has saved me from so much stuff or in a higher power. I'm just speaking about this. But then I realized, what about the near misses I don't even know about? And there's probably more of those. So it's kind of funny. But I can appreciate what you're saying, like how hearing someone else's story can be so impactful, because at one moment I felt like I was the biggest victim in the world. And then I came across some people who had been way, way, way into stuff. And it, it gave me appreciation for even the little things I did have because they were a blessing, like we're not guaranteed anything on this earth. And, once you start seeing everything as a blessing, you're like, I think too often we run around thinking like I'm entitled to these headphones or, I have to have the best cell phone or something like that. When the truth is, no, you don't, and, people do without. Absolutely. So that's amazing. You're in the middle of a storm. You're being put to the iron and the sun comes out and you see a pot of dolphins and say,
But key points, like when we've made decisions of altering course, I can tell you that it's happened more than once. It's happened more than once. They show up. They're like my spirit animals. In fact, I got a tattoo of a dolphin when I got to French Polynesia on my calf. I'm anti-tattoo, but I've got a darn dolphin on my skin now because yeah.
I
But
love it.
the thing was though, the insurance paid for the repairs, but the damage and the PTSD that I got, I couldn't pay anybody to take away. So unfortunately, when we made our next crossing across the Atlantic, we did make it. But every time the wind started to pick up and the waves started to build and it wasn't forecasted, I had so much stress. I had so much panic attack, anxiety that by the time we arrived in the Virgin Islands, I kept saying, today's the day I'm going to tell Dan I can't cross oceans. Like I will fly and meet you and go around the world with you, but I cannot cross oceans with you anymore. And that's when we pulled into St. Martin in the Virgin Islands, and there's a harbor there with 100 boats in it. And we put our anchor down, and I'm really struggling with myself on the inside because I'm living this normal life, but inside I'm like I'm about to rock Dan's world here, and it hurt me viscerally.
But
So we drop anchor, and 3 boats away out of 100 boats in this harbor is John Kretschmer, the man that we did our heavy weather training passage with. So I call him on the radio and I said, John, it's Dan and Allison. We took the passage with you. He goes, yeah, of course, remember you come over for happy hour. So we get in our dinghy and we go over there at happy hour and there's a couple other people on the boat and everybody's getting introduced or whatever. And so finally John turns over and he looks at me and he goes, so Allison, how's it going? I'm like, John, it's really awful. Like just we got caught in this terrible storm and all this crap happened. And I describe everything and he starts laughing. And like, he goes, do you know how lucky you are? I'm like, no. And he said, your boat did fine. Your husband did fine. You're still out here. He goes, do you know how many people would have gone to shore, sold the boat, and never gotten back on again? Because that's the worst you're ever going to see. Because that's it. You survived it. goes, "You've
You
got
got it out of the
this."
way.
And he was the only person in the world that could have looked at me and said that, and I would have believed him. And what are the chances for this 80% water of him being in the harbor when I was getting ready to tell my husband I couldn't do this anymore? The only person on the planet that could have told me that, and I would have said, "You're right."
That's amazing. Perfect time, perfect place. And talk about right on time. And that's the way it works a lot of the times. Like you'll go through the depths of that stress. You'll go straight down into it. You'll actually come up with a plan. I may not be able to handle this. I may have to bail out. And right as the words are being like formulated in your mind on how they're going to come out of your lips that day and how the day is going to be affected, that guy's sitting in the harbor. That's amazing. That's a miracle.
It is, but I can give you 50 examples of that. Not just one,
Really.
but the more you embrace it and the more you believe in your destiny and that you are on a plan on a path that's planned by a higher power than yourself, and you
Yeah.
embrace it, there are so many signs. And if you're
Yeah.
not looking for them, you will never see them. If you're looking for them, they will appear everywhere, and they do. And it's the smallest daily things. Like I can't even tell you all of them, but they happen a lot.
Well, how do you prepare yourself to see them? Because that's a really important topic. The idea that if you go out with anger in your heart, you're going to find anger and hate out there. If you go out with love in your heart, you're more likely to find love. How did that kind of matriculize like inside of you? Like how did you find that space?
Mother taught me. My
Okay.
mother, she's 96 and she's an amazing person. And every time I talk to her, she tells me about brilliant things that happen in her daily life, and how she's able to help people and how she's able to, but she asks for it. You have to ask for it and you have to be open to it. And, I spent 60 years of my life not doing that, or 55 years of my life not doing that. And the moment I turned that corner, that's when the changes started to happen. And it's incredible, really.
So if I were going to practice right now with you, would I wake up in the morning and basically say, I would say Jesus or God, but someone else might out there might say higher power, whatever it may be. Is it actually saying today, if let me see opportunities to help individuals? Is it that kind of like awareness thing?
Yes, and I do that. That's the way I start every single one of my mornings. Every morning I start that way, and it starts with being grateful, because if you don't have that being grateful aspect that you're given this opportunity, I don't think the other things fall in line. And it's just kind of a
Hmm.
theme that I've heard other people talk about, that aspect of being grateful. And then when you have combined the grateful with the concept that you have to be actively looking and seeking, then that's
Hmm.
when things come together, because um, it's not just one thing that gets you to a place. There's a lot of different things that feed into it.
Yeah. And this has grown more and more as you've been on your travels. Like it just kind of like every time you see a new sign or a new person to help, it maybe broadens your, or I don't know, grows your, I don't know the way to say it.
Well,
It
you're
just
creating
seems
a
like,
magnet. You're creating a magnet. You're
okay,
becoming
okay,
magnetic, and the things that you're looking for are going to stick to you. So you're
got
basically
it.
growing who you are as a person and your energy, I guess.
Yeah. And I've learned that you have to do that a lot of the times without knowing the way, but you're just opening yourself up to learn the way, to learn kind of like the process, the path, whatever it may be. Because it's tough, just having the courage suddenly to be like, God, send me a problem that I can help fix. Not a lot of people are looking for that, but it's funny when you help people, I experience the greatest amount of joy, especially since I've gotten sober. Like since I've gotten sober, like I thought life was going to suck. I thought it was going to be boring and everything else. M- But the feeling you get from helping somebody who really needs help far surmounts the way you feel putting a substance in your body. It's like it's it's tangible, it's got traction, and you're watching someone else grow. Yeah. That's so amazing.
the people that we meet on this sailing adventure, because there are certain routes to get around the world and certain times of year that you take those routes, and certain harbors that you want to be in because they've got what you need there when you're, making these extended
Right.
passages. So we've made friendships with people, and all of those people, and we come from different countries. We come from the Netherlands, from, different parts of Europe, from the US, from all over the place. And there's never any distinction between countries or backgrounds. You're just sailors. And the sailors are the most incredible people I've ever seen. The moment there is a crisis anywhere, every one of them is in their dinghy and they are there to help without question, without hesitation. And you just realize that your life is now based on being helped or helping others. I mean, that's really what this life is about, because there are so many breakages and so many crisis situations because of weather and all these crazy things that happen when you're out there. I mean, this is not an easy life. People are like, oh, well, it must be real easy to have that attitude when all you're doing is living on a 43-foot boat out in the middle of the ocean. But darn if it's not a lot of work and there's not tons and tons of crises. And, that's the other half. That is cut in half. The good and the bad are cut in half. But what's different is people's response around us to the bad stuff, and how everybody is on the same page. Is like, you've got to pay it forward. You have to pay it forward, because when the crap hits the fan, you're going to need somebody, and they're going to be there for you. We call it a black box. So sailors have this black box on their boat, and whenever you do something good and you help somebody without being asked, or you pay it forward, something goes into that black box. And then when you're in a crisis, there is somebody there with what you need when you need it. And I can point this out, is that we were in a marina getting ready to cross the Pacific, and we needed this one part for our boat, for the shrouds. My husband was replacing all the rigging, and we couldn't get this part anywhere. Could not get it. And Dan just put this message out onto the group chat. Everybody has a WhatsApp group now for every harbor, so you can ask people questions, meet people. And he goes, does anybody happen to have that? And he didn't hold out any hope, because not everybody has the same kind of rigging, the same size fittings, the same brand. We needed a specific size and specific brand. So we go off to find something else in Panama City, and we come back, and sitting on our boat is that part. No note, no person claiming it, saying, here it is, just sitting there on our boat.
Wow.
And the chances are infinitesimal, but that's just one small example, in case somebody's like, well, how does this happen? Well, this is how it happens. Things fall together when you need them.
And it sounds like you guys adapt together, figure out what the problem is. And then it's nice when you have a lot of people working on it, because of diversity and experience diversity and, depth of knowledge on how to work on a boat and all that kind of stuff. Because you were just telling me about another part of your boat that was having issues recently, which has kept you at port for a little bit. What's the issue again? I forgot.
The fuel injection pump in our 1980s built Yanmar engine failed, which means our engine no longer worked.
And then you had to basically source out, where can I find this piece? And then someone thought they had it, and then they didn't. And then you tried to send something on an airplane, but it can't be sent because it has oil. And then someone else said they could send it, but they ran into the same problem, but didn't tell you. And it ended up on a boat, and then all this kind of stuff. So it was just a funny story that you were telling, and you're just so calm about. You're like, we're still here.
Yeah. Well, we have 3 criteria: still alive, still in love, still afloat. If we meet those 3 criteria, then everything else is going to work itself out when it's meant to work itself out.
So, I love that. And it's based on kind of gratitude, what you have. Yeah. That's amazing. That balances the seesaw. A lot of days is, that appreciation for if you have one thing, that's amazing. I've got this one thing today. That's great. It's amazing. Now, you have been on many travels in your boat at this point. Is there any one particular trip or something like that stands out the most, besides almost being swallowed by the Atlantic? But and anything else that kind of stands out to you that that maybe you've written about because you're a writer and you write about your trip. So I didn't know if we could get a snippet of maybe something that pops to your head.
Yeah, well, we have had a lot of interesting adventures, which is why I'm on my third memoir book about our sailing adventures. So I have Riding the Waves of
Yeah.
Reality 1, which is the first 3 years and our epic beginning. And then Riding the Waves of Reality 2, which was our time in the Mediterranean, which was absolutely uh, turmoil and oh no, it's magic and mayhem is the Riding the Waves of
Really?
Reality 2, magic and mayhem. Because there was all kinds of wonderful, beautiful things, and the mayhem was incredible. I mean, my husband died. He came up to the night watch and he just keeled over. I'm like, oh my God, he's dead. And I'm on the radio calling, Mayday, Mayday, my husband's dead. Somebody help me. Well, he wasn't dead. He just passed out, but I'd never seen him do that before. So I just assumed he was dead. So, my
Oh
husband
man.
died on that journey. But anyway, and then I'm on my third one, which is going to be from basically our Atlantic crossing to get back to the Caribbean, where we went to the ABCs. We visited Curacao and loved it, and that's a huge part of my book, huge. And then,
Really?
yeah, I just wrote about it yesterday, in fact. And then our Pacific crossing was something for the storybooks because we left. It took us 3 times to leave Panama because we kept having engine problems. We didn't know what the problem was with the engine. We kept returning and having people fix it, and they kept making it worse. So we paid
No.
three times to have it fixed. Thought we were good, and we had to make an emergency landing in the Galapagos Islands because that's as far as we got before crap hit the fan. So we spent
Right.
2 weeks there, which was magical, and we wanted to go there, but it was $4,000 just to anchor your boat. We're like, we can't afford this with all the money we just spent on repairs, so we were going to bypass one of our dream places. And here we got to go there because of an unfortunate situation. So we ended up in the Galapagos, and we got to scuba dive with hammerhead sharks and see the giant turtles, and it was
Wow.
magical. So then we left to do the rest of the crossing to get the 2,000 miles across the Pacific. And we ran into these Chinese fishing fleet boats. And I don't know have you heard of the Chinese fishing fleets out in the middle
Yeah,
of
I've
the
heard that
oceans?
it's not great to be around.
Well, they've got these 200-foot boats, and there's like a fleet of 8 to 10 of them, and they're just raping the oceans. And they've got like slave labor on board. These guys, they take their passports, and they're basically slaves on these boats. They have the processing boats, and the boats with the freezers, and the boats that put the nets out, and they put in a 60-mile-long net and catch everything, and they kill the turtles and the dolphins and the whales and everything that's in that net. They kill it, and then they take what they want.
60 miles?
The one, yeah, 60 miles. And there's little
Wow.
GPS trackers on them, so you can see the 60-mile long net that you can't sail through. So we had just avoided a fleet because they don't stop. Like, we're sailing through them and we're under sail, so we have right away. They weren't stopping, weren't slowing down, and on the AIS it showed us like a collision course, and I'm on the radio screaming at them, and they're not even answering, and they don't care. They'll run your butt over and keep on going and not even think about it. So we had to turn our engine on and get through the fleet before they hit us. And then we know that people that have snagged remnants of their fishing nets, because what they do is when they get it in a knot or whatever, they just cut sections free and leave it in the ocean. So you have a sailboat with a rudder, and if that net is right below the surface, you're going to snag it. So sure enough, a couple days later, it's the middle of the night, and we're in 20 knots of wind and, sailing along, 8 to 10-foot waves, and all of a sudden our boat comes to a halt in the middle of the night, which is a really bad thing because, you're in thousands of feet of water and there's nothing to catch your boat on except a piece of the net. So it
Right.
was dark, and, our boat is just not moving, and the autopilot went off and all this stuff happened. And Dan's like, we can't do anything in the dark. We have to wait till morning. So we hove to, which is where you turn the boat into the wind and you backwind one of your sails, and it keeps you just pointed into the wind, and you can just kind of like ride over the waves gently, stay facing into the wind. And fortunately, the current was moving in our direction. So even though we weren't sailing, we were still doing 2 knots in the right direction. So that was like a little bit of providence there. So we both went down, went to sleep. We woke up in the morning. The waves are still 8 to 10 feet, still blowing 20. And Dan would have to go under the boat to see what was caught. And I'm like, you are not going into the ocean. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So fortunately, he's like the MacGyver of the ocean because he can save the boat from sinking with just a paper clip, literally. And so he rigged up our pole, our extending pole boat hook, and he put the GoPro on the strapped it to it, and then he put the GoPro underneath the boat and was able to see the rudder. And sure enough, we could see marks where something had been tangled on the rudder, but it wasn't there. So heaving to caused enough of the stoppage that with the washing of the water and the current, it took off whatever was stuck on there. So
Good.
we're assuming it was a Chinese fishing net, because we know, like I said, we know people have actually also caught them. But the bad news is when we put our sails back and started sailing again, our autopilot did not work. And we do not hand steer across oceans. An
Right.
autopilot takes you, because our boat is huge and heavy, and in huge waves, it was physically difficult to steer the boat. So our autopilot is broken, but the net had also loosened our steering cables. So now we're trying to steer, and like I would be up there and I would try to keep the boat as it's rolling down the wave in the right direction, and I couldn't get the steering right, and our boat would turn sideways. Our whole boat is like broaching over and things are crashing, and I'm like, oh God, I can't do this. So Dan is like, all right, you just need to do like 30 minutes. I'll do 3 hours, you do 30 minutes, and then we'll heave 2 each night. So, but we couldn't even do that well. So we had to take an entire day of heaving 2, and we had to take our whole boat apart, the entire binnacle off with the steering wheel, down through the boat, all the boards out to the steering cables, follow it through to the back of the boat. So the queen size mattress had to come off, all the boards that are under the mattress, and we had to get into the very, very back of the boat with giant pieces of, I don't know what you call them, pliers or wrenches or whatever.
Yeah.
And we had to try to tighten the steering cables around these big old rusty wheels. And it took us hours, and we're sweating and we're bloody because our knuckles are hitting stuff, and we get it all done. And now there's no way to test it because everything's apart. So we had to put the whole boat back together again, bolt with the pneumatic drills to get the big bolts back onto the steering column, get the wheel back on. Dan's like, say a prayer. And we unhove 2, and he grabbed the wheel, and he says, it's not perfect, but it's good. It's working. We're going to be okay. And I'm like, oh, thank God, because our only other option at that point was to do an SOS and abandon ship.
Okay.
So we got the steering
Wow.
working. We were able to steer, but we are 680 miles still from shore. So we had a hand steer for 680 miles. And we would heave 2 each night. But one night we hove 2, and we're only like 2 days from shore, and it's getting close where we can taste it. We're like 2 days from shore. And Dan wakes up the next morning, and there on the GPS, those darn Chinese people put a 60-mile long net between us and where we needed to go. So we had a choice. We could go upwind and beat into the wind and the waves, or we could go downwind and go like 30 miles out of the way. It was beat 10 miles upwind or go 30 miles out of our way downwind. And I'm like, let's go upwind. I don't want to go that far because that'd be miserable. I'm like, I'm okay with it. So we spent like this miserable day pounding into the wind, and it was too rough to do anything. But we get around the net, and then we're home free. And before we started, Dan had made the route we were going to sail. And he goes, where is your number one place you want to go in this world? And I'm like, the French Polynesians. I mean, who doesn't want to go to the French Polynesians? So we were getting ready to make landfall in my number one place after 8 years of sailing. We're finally going to land on an island in the French Polynesians. And as we get closer and closer, I'm sitting up, and I got my legs over the railing, and I'm looking out, and I can finally, he goes, do you see it? Do you see it? And I'm like, I see it. And I felt nothing. Like I didn't have one shred of emotion in my body. I was so mentally and physically drained. I was incapable of feeling anything. So we're arriving, and I'm taking photos, and I'm just kind of looking at it and go, yeah, we're here. And we pull into the harbor, and we drop our anchor. And Dan had a special bottle of champagne he had been saving just for this moment. And he went down and got it. I'm like, sorry, honey, I just don't feel like it's drinking the champagne, damn it. We're celebrating whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
So he opens the champagne, and we do our toasting, and we put our little chairs on the stern, and we watch the sunset, our first sunset in the Polynesians, just enjoying the fact of not being out at sea for 30 days.
Yeah, I was about to say, you see land. Yeah.
So we go to bed, and next morning there's a knock on our hull. And I'm like, what is that? So I peer over, and it's a man in a boat, and he's got to pull up anchor, and you got to leave. And I'm like, what? He goes, there's a tsunami coming. I'm like, really? He goes, yep, you got to leave the harbor. He goes, all the water, last tsunami drained all the water out of the harbor. You'll be sitting on the bottom. And so I'm like, wow, is there nothing like icing on the cake to throw a tsunami in after you just hand steered across the Pacific?
Yeah.
So we had to go back out to harbor and hand steer all night long the next night, waiting for the tsunami to pass, but it didn't. It didn't take any water out of the harbor, so we didn't even have to leave. But anyway,
Yeah.
precautions.
Yeah. Yeah. It
So
would have been a
anyway,
bummer if you were on the bottom of the harbor. That would, yeah. And then the water comes back in. That is an adventure that you just shared. That is like a story about survival. It's almost like that's what sailing sounds like. It's like we're going to survive this. And then
but I did I
that's
did so much better with the fear and the anxiety and
yeah.
I mean, some part of me has to be healing because I should have been freaking out more than I was, and I'm glad that
That's
that
awesome. Yeah, it's tough, because like you can't see the part of you that freaks out. You know what I mean? You can't you like I wish I could like especially in the beginning could have taken my PTSD out and been like, "See, this is what's wrong with me." Or like but you can't see it, you know what I mean? So people don't understand what's happening inside unless they've been in that kind of like mind space where you're just kind of freaking out. I know the feeling. It sucks. And you're telling yourself, you're like, don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out. You can handle this, you can handle this. And you're like, you hit that moment, you're like, I can't handle this. It's like a total overload. What a great example of you pulling into the harbor and being like, meh, because you're so burned from like the last couple days. Yeah. And I don't think people understand that. I mean, that's a great physical example of, our minds get tired regardless if we're doing strenuous physical activity or strenuous mental activity. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough rest when it's mental activity because think we're not supposed to be tired from it or emotions. Like we're not really supposed to be tired from emotions, but they wear you out like a workout. You know what I mean? Like it will totally take your energy 100%.
it's
Now,
called adrenal fatigue, and it's a real thing.
adrenal fatigue. Okay, I like that.
No,
That
it's a
sounds
thing.
better than Cameron freaking out and can't stop freaking out. I'm having fatigue. I like that. That's good stuff. Um, Now, we like to, if we can, say something to someone who might still be stuck in their own shit creek. But in this case, I thought it might be appropriate to talk to the person who's been delaying doing something that they really want to do, something that they feel is kind of like a dream, but they don't feel maybe they're worthy of it, or they have the means, or they're just scared. You've walked through that door in a big way, and I was just wondering if you could speak on that for a minute.
Well, the thing about life is you can sit where you are and stay stagnant and live with that fear and that anxiety and the realization that there is something you want to do and you're just afraid to do it. Or you can not let that fear and that worry stop you because it's going to be better on the other side. And even if it's tougher, when you get everything ironed out, it's going to be better. And you're never going to achieve that if you just sit there and you live in fear and you live in doubt. And life's too short. I mean, it's just too short. And if you don't take that plunge, and no, it's not going to be easy. Like you can't go into an expectation like, oh, this is going to work seamlessly. But if you have that faith and you have that ability to be thankful and look for signs to keep you going, you're going to find them and you're going to be surprised at how many there are.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Keep your eyes open for the good things. We've talked about on here, if you close your eyes, if you're only looking for bad, you'll find bad. But if you're looking for beauty and you're looking for opportunities to help and love, they'll be there too. It's just you got to key your eye in on it. Um, yeah, it's been such a pleasure meeting you. It is so cool to know that you're halfway across the world on a boat, making your dreams come true. And I, I have trouble a lot of the times actually just starting something. And sometimes it's because I'm worried about what other people are going to think. So I'll focus on that and hush everything down. Okay, I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing this for me. And then I'll project something terrible into the future because I've experienced stuff in the past, and then I'll freeze myself that way too. But ev- eventually, it gets down to you and only you. You've been able to kind of eliminate all the other excuses and whatever it is. And in that moment, if you have the opportunity to go for it and you don't, the one thing that you may experience after that is regret. And like you said, life is short, and it would be a bummer regretting something that you had the opportunity to do only because you limited yourself. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
thank you for
So-
being a living example.
Well, thank you for having me. And I have to say that I still have my moments, like especially with this engine thing, when something else went wrong recently. We lost our water maker too, so we have no fresh water. I have to carry every drop of fresh water, which requires taking a dinghy to shore, walking a mile, and carrying the water back to our boat. But we have the part on the way, so hopefully that will be resolved soon. But I was in a low spot for a day, and then I was looking through my Facebook, and this little boy pops up, and he was just the most radiant kid, and he was so well spoken, and he had a Bible in front of him, and he goes, "For all you that are feeling sorry for yourself right now, I have a message for you." And his message was, quit worrying, because worrying doesn't come from God, it comes from you, and you're going to be taken care of. He said, quit letting fear control you, because fear, it's just what you let it be, and if you stop succumbing to it, it's going to go away. And he said, stop speaking negatively. Speak positively and say good things, because good things will lead to good things happening if you speak them. And then lastly, he said, you don't have to please everybody. Just worry just about yourself. You don't have to please everybody. Just do what's good for you. And I was like,
Yeah.
It just brightened my whole day. Those 4 things. And if you follow them, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you really will. You really will. Anybody who's listening, I'm going to put all of your contact information in your bio. So when it comes to getting a hold of your books, when it comes to reaching out to you online, maybe even finding you on social media, we'll make sure we put that in the description in the bio so that everyone can reach out to you who hears this, okay?
Perfect.
All right. Again, thank you so much. Super appreciate it. As we wrap up this conversation with the nautical novelist, what stands out most isn't just the miles sailed or the storm survived, but actually the decision to go, to leave certainty for uncertainty, comfort for growth, fear for possibility. Because her story really isn't about sailing the world. It's about learning how to navigate life itself. If this episode resonated with you, remember this. You don't have to cross an ocean to change your life, but you do have to be willing to leave the shore. Thanks for listening to Shit Creek Survivors. Hit that subscribe button. It's free, and we'll see you on the next one.